Good morning and welcome to Love Every Moment, coming to you today from San Angelo, Texas. Today's verse is 1 Peter 2:13 and 14. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. Now, this comes after last week's verse, and I have the link up here, which says, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles. And one way that we are to do that is to submit. We submit to God first, but we also submit to the government, even if it's a corrupt government. And spoiler alert, every human government is always corrupt, at least compared to God's government. So we are to submit to the government. That also means that we can't go on this crusade about being a sovereign citizen. You can't be a biblical Christian and a sovereign citizen. According to this, according to Matthew 22:21, which says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, we have to be good citizens as Christians. Now, with that in mind, God has set up human governments, even though they are corrupt, but he set them up, as it says in verse 14, for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. In other words, to keep law and order. At least that concept is better than a no-holds-barred, anarchist, Lord of the Flies kind of situation. At least even a corrupt government kind of keeps order, and that is a godly thing, and we are to submit to that. Then you say, but the government is so corrupt, I can't obey them. Well, this is what it says here. Think about this. When Peter wrote these words, who was the king at that time? That was Caesar. In fact, I think it may have been Nero, the great persecutor of the church. And here's Peter saying we got to submit to these people. And, wow, that's really something. I can tell you this, no matter who our current president is, and whether he or she is a Republican or a Democrat, that person will never be anywhere near as bad as the Caesars were. And here's Peter saying we got to obey these folks. All right? So, our government here in the United States, sure, it's bad, sure, it's corrupt, but they're not going to force us to deny God. They're not going to force us to commit murder. They're not going to force us to commit adultery. They're not going to forbid us to pray. So we really have it fairly easy, or at least easier than Peter did in these verses. Now, one thing that comes to mind is I like watching these cop shows that follow policemen on their duties. And there was an episode where there was some melee in a store, started as an argument, went into some violence and hitting and so forth. The police come in, they don't know what's going on, so they had to kind of shut down the situation. That meant they put everybody under detention, in handcuffs, and even on the ground. That included an innocent bystander. That guy did not resist. He didn't gripe or complain. He went in handcuffs, went on his face. Later, after about 5 minutes, they found out who the real culprit was, released him, thanked him for not interfering with their investigation. That is the Christian model. Now think about this. The disciples often were jailed. Did they complain? No. Think about Daniel or Joseph in the Old Testament. They were thrown in prison. They didn't complain because they submitted to the human institution, corrupt as it was, knowing that this was part of the characteristic of God, that we be a submissive people. It reflects God's goodness there. Now, let's think of also Matthew 5:41 that says, whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. This was a law about Roman soldiers who could take any citizen and force that citizen to carry his gear for 1 mile. It's a corrupt law. But here it says, not only should we submit, we should go the extra mile and that way minister to them. That brings us ministering to the government. Imagine that. What a privilege that would be. So let's choose to love every moment, because then we're going to love every moment. I'm your average wretch, and I hope you have a great week.